Been here 33 years, and I love it here. I mean, there's no other city like it in the whole country. It's got a mixture of everything, you know. And I really think that the world should take a good look at how we all live here and get along, okay? You know.
Take your ass on. You're not going to get a whole good deal.
Not all the time, but
huh?
Not all the time.
That's right. I'm going to wait for her to finish. Where was I?
There's a lot of people money hungry, a lot of people in their addiction, and they try to find every means necessary to get the next fix.
There's countlessness, the killings, the stealing, and the people is like cruel.
This is not no playpen. This is not no playground. It is serious do or die out here.
It's a decent area that unfortunately crowds people who don't have opportunity.
Well, the police contain it to a, like I say, 10-block radius. They keep all the homeless here. They keep all the nuts in here. Everything they don't want affecting the outside city.
Literally, in a day's time, several kilos of crack cocaine will change hands on this corner in bulk form.
I've seen a couple of my own cousins get killed in front of me out here, point blank, over $5, $10 depths of drugs being owned or money being owed to them, where they knocked a youngster out, they came back retaliation and shot him.
The Tenderloin is statistically one of the worst drug getters in the world, but regardless of that, there's a lot of people here that don't do drugs. And I think that the Tenderloin is really one of the only areas in San Francisco that still has working class people in it.
The Tenderloin is a constantly evolving and changing neighborhood in San Francisco, surrounded by some of the wealthiest businesses and corporations.
And basically, you got people who are living in their own filth, like 10 feet from folks who are, earning $1 billion a year, within like 20 feet of each other.
Hey, I said, Mr. Devil, sir, I said, Mr. Devil, sir, did you ever hear tell of anybody ever escaping from God before? He said, no way, hell no, nobody ever did, but you can go ahead and try it, can't you?
Gasoline, can I pet your Wolverine? On the day my best friend died, I could not get my copper clean. I don't wanna take it up with little Joe. I don't wanna fade
In homelessness, I say that everyone in San Francisco is an expert. If you live here, work here, or visit here, you see homelessness. It is really difficult to spend a lot of time in San Francisco and not have exposure to it. So people are all experts in that sense. Are they all right? No. There's information that people don't have, but I respect the fact that people experience it. I will take what an angry citizen has to say about homelessness, and I have to reflect on it and respond to it, and I think it's legitimate. And San Francisco is a town where people pay attention and people know what's going on in San Francisco. They read the paper, they talk to their neighbors, and I think that awareness is a very strong value in San Francisco, and I think it adds value to this effort.
To a large extent, you get a little numb to it when you see it every day. It's in your face every day, you know. When I first was here, I used to see people shooting up on the street, and it used to shock me. Now it's like, if there are no kids around, I don't say anything. It doesn't bother me at all. If there's kids coming down the block, I might, nudge somebody or say, hey, clean up your shit. There's kids coming. But you just wind up getting numb to it after a while.
We're gonna sit here in this room 1,000 years from now, we'll still be talking about homelessness. It's a fact of nature. I mean, it's gonna happen. Even if you and I would come up with some out of space plan right now to house every homeless person by 5 o'clock tonight, and at 5:01 we'll sit down and wipe the sweat off our brow and look outside, there'll be 20 more that just got off the Greyhound.
You can try to help them, but ultimately they have to make the decision that they want help. And until they do that, there's not much you can do for them. You can talk to them, you could give them money, but 9 times out of 10, if you give them money, it's going to the dope man anyway, because that's what they're gonna go do.
It's just a way of life. It becomes a habit of, how we're used to having our own kitchen and a bathroom in our home and we maintain it. It's in the same reference. They're just stuck here. A lot of them have very good hearts. Some of them have got high IQs, but some of them, I don't know. Some of them you just can't help no more, even if you try.
I think a lot of people just automatically put homeless people in a stereotype of drug users and everything else scummy. And, there's a lot of homeless families and whatnot out here. And they kind of force the whole area into this little spot in the Tenderloin. And there is a lot of bad things going on here. She goes to school in the Tenderloin right there. It's actually kind of ridiculous how many people we walk by shooting up and doing all kinds of stuff. But not everybody, just because they don't have money or they don't have a place to live, falls into that category. You know what I mean? There's people around here trying to help themselves too. There's all kinds of people around here.
I believe all homeless are in pain and traumatized by the conditions of sleeping without the security of a locked door, sleeping vulnerable through the night. They can be attacked or robbed or arrested at any time, or assaulted or raped. It's a horrible, painful, dangerous life.
In San Francisco, the homeless and disadvantaged are not materially different than homeless and disadvantaged anywhere else on the planet, or anywhere else that they've been in history. They consist primarily of people who are disabled in some way and unable to support themselves, or are economically disabled in ways that they cannot support themselves. And because of those circumstances, they end up on the streets eventually. Some of them can be rehabilitated and need rehabilitation services of a far more pervasive and far-seeing order than anything we have now. Others will never be able to be rehabilitated because of the extent of their disabilities and circumstances, and need lifetime support services in the way of housing, food, clothing, et cetera, et cetera.
The next verse. Well, when I die, won't you dress me in straight-lace shoes? Box bag coat and a Stetson hat. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so the boys will know I died standing high. Let it go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, she can look this old wide world
When we were looking back in 2010, I guess, because we moved in January 2011, we had 3 options that were all viable, and we had to just decide between the 3. They chose this option because of the community benefits agreement, and it actually had nothing to do with the money. The money that we save is not in comparison to what we're giving as far as grants and free technology, different things like that. It's not really make or break. For us, it was we wanted to help the community, and this was a really good incentive to get our employees out into the community. I don't think when they signed on to this, they had any idea really what they were getting into. I don't think anybody did, because it was just figure it out as you go along.
The technology industry has produced like 4 of the 6 most valuable companies in the world by market cap. So that would be Apple, then Google, then Microsoft, then Facebook. I mean, that is remarkable, right? If you go down to the South Bay, you know, it still looks like it's a 1950s era suburb. If you look at 19th century industrialization, when New York grew enormous like banking and telegraph and railroad and other types of empires around that, like they decided to be a city, to have like a large grid street structure, and they decided to build up, and they decided to integrate into one regional government with one government for what is now more than 8 million people. The Bay Area doesn't have one government, it has 101 governments, each doing whatever they want and whatever their voters think is appropriate for them. On a micro level, yes, it might make sense for Palo Alto to sort of preserve its character and quality of life. If it does that and it produces this industry, as it has over the last 80 years, and it doesn't change its infrastructure capacity, that's going to have really problematic effects for other people and communities.
I think of gentrification and displacement in 2 different ways, and displacement in particular. You know, there's one image of it that's in California. There's the Ellis Act, which enables rental property owners to evict tenants, and that causes displacement, and evictions cause displacement. So that's one kind of displacement where a tenant is, you know, forced out involuntarily. But there's another kind of displacement that to me is more powerful, but it's more subtle because it takes place over years and decades. I, as a tenant, might vacate my unit voluntarily, but in the absence of strict rent control, the next household who moves in, the rent is much higher, and therefore they are more affluent. And so it's not that someone was kicked out, but it is that over the course of years and decades, the nature of the neighborhood changes from being predominantly low income to being middle or high income. And that has happened, that is happening in many cities across the country. And it's that kind of displacement that has been limited in the Tenderloin, because 33% of it is owned or controlled by nonprofits or public entities. So the other 2/3 is still subject to this long-term outmigration and change in the demographics of who lives here. So I don't want to say that we are immune from quote-unquote gentrification, and at the same time it is very different from most other neighborhoods that are experiencing these kinds of economic pressures.
If they didn't have that, it would be well gentrified a long time ago. Like, boom, you're out, new person in, paying more money, here's your dishwasher, all your good amenities and whatnot, you know. And
I can't talk too much shit though, because we all work for property management companies.
Totally.
But we can talk shit anyway.
I think that I'm speaking for all of us in saying that we have a very unique perspective, all being building managers.
Oh yeah, firsthand.
We see the inside of our buildings and the generations that are spanned within one building. Somebody living right downstairs from someone who's lived right up, totally different lives, completely different, you know, completely different income bracket, so much diversity. Like like I said, it's like a layer cake. It really is.
I have mixed feelings about the mixed income community. I understand what's motivating that is the lack of middle class housing, the lack of housing for people like teachers and firefighters and people in middle incomes who cannot afford housing in San Francisco, who cannot raise a family in San Francisco, so we don't have many 3-bedroom apartments. And home prices are so high that to qualify for a median mortgage, you have to have a combined annual income of $318,000 a year. And people who work in civil service, people who work middle income, they can't afford $318,000. They don't make $300,000 plus per year. So I see the need to give them housing, and I don't want to deny them housing, but I don't want to do so at the expense of losing low-income housing in the Tenderloin.
This is our city, and these are our citizens, and I will stand up for them, and we will keep our mayor accountable, and we demand that he help now. This is a crisis. This is beyond a crisis.
I grew up here. In 2001, I was paying $400 for my apartment at 756 Vale Street. So how they doing, how they kicking people out, it's ridiculous. But if you want your piece of the pie and not the devil's pie in San Francisco, you better fight for it. That's right.
I also want to recognize that we are Jalamu Ohlone territory. And this colonization, these settler colonial laws that incarcerate poor people, every poor person they get, happened in the beginning of the theft of this indigenous Ohlone territory. It did not start with the Super Bowl. It started with a system that says if you have money, you have rights. If you have stolen indigenous territory that tells you that you own something, you have rights. And if you're a poor, working class, a person of color, you automatically are under attack.
We have the fastest growing inequality of any major city in this country. If San Francisco were an independent country, the level of inequality that we have would rival that of countries in Africa. But we are going to look back at this point, the hosting of the Super Bowl, as the beginning of, I think, a movement here in San Francisco. We want a city that works for us. We want a city that actually helps people, that doesn't criminalize them. And on the issue of homelessness, what we need is actually housing and services for these people. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Now I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard. It's really hard.
Now I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard. Now I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard.
I usually just carry like a book with me. Change of clothing. Clothes and all that. In a plastic bag.
And get the towels.
And you can't leave certain things at the shelter.
The towels.
A nice jacket, 2 pairs of shoes, 2 changes of pants, 2 underwears.
All the things that you think you're gonna take to survive. Now I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard.
Now I I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard. Now I know it's hard to leave your stuff. It's really hard.
I have to have a guard up out here. Number one, the odds already are against me because I'm a woman. Number two, even though some people say that's no longer happening, I'm a black woman and it is still happening. A lot of it's still happening. A lot of people are still racist. A lot of people are still... When I was like 18, I was what they call a streetwalker and making a lot of money. I was young, going through a lot of things. This is before I had my first child. Thought it was fun. I was having a lot of fun doing that. I was having a lot of fun just making money, period. I wound up getting pregnant, which is when I decided to stop because I found out that I was having a daughter and there was no way I wanted my daughter to be born to a mother that was a hooker because I wanted her to at least have a choice in life. I didn't want her coming into this world thinking that that would be the only thing she would be good at or the only thing that she had to do. For a little while, I took a medical assistant class at Hill College where I could have actually finished to become a registered nurse, but for some odd reason, relapsed. I've been using drugs for a long time, crack, heroin. I actually got hooked on heroin by a guy who was supposed to be my boyfriend. He had been giving it to me in my weed, and for a long time I didn't even know I had a habit until I went to jail one time. And my stomach hurt so bad it felt like it was being pulled out of my body. And then that's when they took me to the hospital and ran some tests and found out that I had over 3 grams of heroin in my system. What's stopping me from getting clean is the fact that for a while I wasn't ready. They say that you have to reach your all-time low, which is your bottom, before you want to start over. The only thing I have to do now is get off my ass, stop using excuses, stop thinking that somehow this lifestyle is okay, because it's not. I've never lived so rough in my life. In the past 8 months, I've lived worse than I have in 35 years. I've had my stuff stolen from me almost every day. I had to restart my life almost every day. I have a group of friends out here. I can't really give out names, but we hustle however we have to. And the only real reason how I've been getting along is because I sleep with those friends. Not in a sexual way, but we all stay together. We all sleep together. We all care for each other. We all look out for each other because at the end of the day, we're all each other has. Hi, Anthony. Could I have that water? Thank you. Want to sit down? This is my friend, Anthony. This is my friend. He's somebody that cares for me and looks out for me when I can't sometimes. Doesn't want to be seen, but he is a really good person. I actually got a lot of love for him, whether he knows that or not, because there's been times where I couldn't be there for myself and he's came through for me. All we have is each other out here. And I just want my people to know that as much as I can, I'll be there for them. Try to not look at people like they're not shit or like they're scum, because everybody deserves a chance. Try not to have your heart filled with hatred. Try to love neighbors. Everybody's not that bad. And I think that's it.
I think she's a true meaning of wherever you're from, wherever you're in America, There's always change.
Got that from us. Thanks, Ed.
I really think like the art, whatever the kind of art it is always more like digestible for some people who don't want to deal with the reality, kind of. People don't like to see the poor, right? They don't like to see poor people, they don't like to see people suffering. So when you do a drawing of someone in the situation, they're more like, oh, that's funny, that's a cool drawing. And then they look to it and realize, oh, that's actually bad. That's what sometimes I try to do, like, you make a drawing to make people like look to it, and when they figure out it's something that they saw on the street, it's something that they should pay more attention to.
Most artist communities start in a less than neighborhood, and then over time it seems to change and gentrify and whatnot. That's kind of part of it. I mean, Brooklyn these days and Brooklyn a long time ago is a totally different thing, or Logan Square in Chicago is totally different than it was when I was growing up. The socioeconomic level has gone up, and race has changed, and culture has changed. It always seems to start with the artist that's willing to find that cheap rent and live amongst people that maybe aren't like themselves. They're gonna go and live in an immigrant community. They're fine with that. In fact, they usually embrace it. They go to their local restaurants, they shop locally in their stores.
I mean, I love this city, and I basically grew up here, and I was born here. It's like my home city, but it's also really tough because for me, like as an artist, I have no idea how I would really afford to live here. The techie movement has really done a lot to like destroy, I think, the beauty of the city, even though it's brought a lot of like money here and all that stuff, which is good to a degree.
There are people that just want to seek out just riches and wealth and just trying to live above being a middle class, right? So they just, they'll settle for that techie job. But if you're into the arts or you're into the culture and you really want to like investigate your roots, or you've always been a creative person, that's what's going to make you happy, not chasing something that you can never really grasp. If you're doing something cultural, or you're doing some sort of art or some sort of sport or anything, that will fulfill you, It's just the survival aspect is a little difficult. Yeah.
Everyone's got their crosses to bear, but anyways, I'm waiting for some SSI to clear, so can't work a regular job, and playing music is basically the one reason I haven't just decided to let it all go. It's my reason for living, the thing that I enjoy the most. It's the redeeming quality. It's the time when I step outside myself and I just get to play, and everybody, it's a win-win situation, People enjoy the music, I enjoy playing it, and better than working at Starbucks for me. My idea of what would be a great thing to do for the world that would change things between the rich and the poor would have there be a cap. Once you make $1 billion, you think someone would be satisfied? But no, it's just like the whole name of like making money is you got to keep making money with your money. If you're not making, it's like, oh, heaven forbid you stop and just spend. It's just like the whole thing of a successful business, I understand, is to keep, reinventing itself, to keep on going, but we have a very finite amount of space in the world, and money, and resources. People who already have more money than they can spend in lifetimes upon lifetimes are hell-bent to make another $1 billion. I mean, that seems like kind of about as extreme as like a drug addict can get. I mean, it doesn't have the same face as like the addicts on the street who, catch so much flack for having their, using drugs. So normally that's like the finger that's wagged at them, That's why, your life is like it is and this and that. But I'm telling you what, there's something about money and the desire for more. That is the biggest like drug thing there is. More, I need more.
I think right now innovation is seen as this buzzword that basically translates into technology. And that is the big disease that this gold rush has given all of us. It's as if a lot of investors and entrepreneurs together took acid and said, wow, every new mobile app is a unicorn. Everyone's gonna make billions. And how we're gonna judge the promise and traction of a new vision and dream is how many signups you got and how many downloads and how many people are signed up to your newsletter. From my point of view, I feel like there are many more core issues we can solve, from hunger to homelessness, because these are all issues that humanity has carried on from tribal days. I mean, it's just important that we're healthy and we have a roof, and it's just important that certain things are taken care of in society. I'm not saying the tech industry is bad, I'm part of it. I think tech can do a lot of scalable good for a lot of people. At the same time, it should be leveraged in the interest of social issues and in the interest of problems that are very deep-rooted in the immediate vicinity.
If you actually look at the history of the way that Americans live, we're still a very deeply residentially segregated society. A lot of people who end up in the tech industry are children of upper middle class backgrounds who grew up in suburbs, who just don't really have any exposure to the way that other communities live. And so coming into a city with all of the issues that come with cities, they just don't have any understanding of the history. They don't have any understanding of why things are the way they are. And that's why, the conversation, it's kind of oblivious at times.
I think a lot of people in the company see this as, hey, we're here, we're pumping money into the community, we're providing jobs, different things like that. There's a lot of people in the community who said, well, we didn't want that in the first place, and you guys kind of came in like a stampede, all of the different tech companies. I do think that there is value in what we're bringing as far as financial means and even volunteerism as far as education and different things like that. My hope for the Tenderloin in the next 10 years is that the sense of community does not change, but the people who really do need help, as far as need help getting into a job, need help getting into a home, that the different resources we're bringing can help kind of bring that level up.
There are many, many ways in which tech companies have stepped forward and supported Tenderloin nonprofit agencies. Whether it's enough is really a different question. And from the tech industry standpoint, startups, they're using venture capitalists' money. They have a relatively short runway in which to prove out their business model. And so I can see their reluctance towards, I'll call it giving it away. We prefer to think of it as investing in their surrounding community.
I do think there's an element of corporate social responsibility, especially for large corporations that do have tens of thousands of employees here. But I also caution that what is missed in this whole discussion is a lot of the things that people want tech to fix are really deeply entrenched public policy problems. I've spent a lot of time on housing. It costs $600,000-$700,000 a unit just to build something here, and so that quickly gets into the billions of dollars. So there are definitely things that they can do. They can contribute to funds for land acquisition, but asking them to solve something that really should be solved at a governmental level and a regional level and probably even a state level, that's not practical.
In my research, I have not run across any neighborhoods in this country in which affordable housing and poor people can coexist successfully with gentrification. The main reason is because gentrification by definition drives property values and rents up and makes it impossible for poor people to afford to live there anymore. The mid-market businesses that came into the neighborhood wanting to get along and be supportive. By that, they mostly meant volunteers, augmenting the volunteers at the nonprofits and things like that. But it's really a drop in the bucket because their cumulative economic effect has been to drive up property values to such a large extent, it's getting difficult for nonprofit services to be able to survive in the neighborhood anymore and offer the services to the people who live here.
If we can have institutional capital investing in superfluous apps and redundant services and products and things that address niche markets for rich people only, if we can have that kind of a broken system still pump out successful
companies and still pump out ROI year after year, return on investment, then I think we can certainly leverage that same model to pump out ROI in social endeavors as well.
We really don't elect innovators. We really don't elect people who are always thinking about tomorrow. We kind of elect people who will make us comfortable basically where we are and only move if there is an outside force that causes them to move more aggressively. Because it's clear that governments a long time ago should have been in the entrepreneurship business rather than figuring out how to tax people. If government had been aggressive about being entrepreneurial, life would be better. And the concentration of wealth wouldn't be as it is, because it would be government providing in a greater way for the reasons why government ought to exist. The organized effort, for an example, of affordable housing included representatives of the Tenderloin being in that, what I call the cartel. They were really smart too. These activists were really smart, and they kind of divided the city up. And they had literally all parts of the city where you could do this kind of building and where you could produce this kind of result. And then they set about to have the laws shaped so that the subsidies would only go to projects that they were involved in. And they were really, really effective politically because they carried the air of total and complete unselfishness, the air of non-profitness, the air of no greed, and the air of being sensitive to the needs of people. Many of them lived in Berkeley. Many of them lived in the Haight. I don't think any of them lived in the Tenderloin or in the South of Market area or even in Chinatown, but they were the lords, so to speak. The cartel has made the cartel's interests of such a priority that the real left makes that kind of their line, and they are rewarded by being elected and re-elected. On the mental health side, we don't have that. We don't have the same kind of political responsiveness. We're almost locked into people's personal relationships being the most effective means by which to advocate in this competitive government. And you have almost a denial by politicians that they are inadequate in their attention to the mental health component of our system.
I've lived in California since 2010. I lived in Wisconsin before that, off and on for about 30 years. I've lived most of the places in the country, it seems by now. I came from ordinary parents, and my parents were actually kind of well-to-do. It just seems like the choices that I've made in life never made me a lot of money. I've been a teacher, I've been a chef, I've worked as a musician, I worked as a copy editor for newspapers, I proofread manuscripts for publishers, I've done a lot of different sorts of jobs. But somehow I ended up not being able to get a job at all and eventually became homeless. Sat on the street for a while looking to get any kind of a bed or whatever, and this, for a lot of people, is the dream, to get your own SRO. And to be sure, I'm actually living in one of the better places here. I have a large room, I have my own bathroom, I've got a little room to move around, but living in an SRO isn't all it's cracked up to be. Having an SRO is not really like having a home. You always feel like tomorrow or the next day you're going to be out in the street again. And part of it's just the contract that you sign, the lease agreement. You don't even get to see the terms of the lease, really. They make you sign things that aren't true, like saying that you inspect the place when you haven't inspected it. A lot of things like that, you'll continually get notices for lease violations, and you may not have ever seen your lease since you've moved in. Part of the reason for this is that nobody regulates anything. They're free to determine at any time that I'm incompetent based on, as they say, the sole judgment of management. They can say at any time that I'm incompetent and seize all my stuff and throw me out. They can do this to anybody here. So you never really feel like you have a home in the sense that an ordinary person does. If you just got out of prison, this probably looks pretty good. If you've been sleeping on the street and maybe you've got beat up or hassled by the police, this might look pretty good, but after you've been here a month or two, if you've ever lived like an ordinary person, then you understand why it is that an SRO is not a home. So it's kind of a catch-22. San Francisco, you know, they say everybody comes for the services, but the thing is they never give them the kind of help that they truly need, which is to be able to move up and move out and do something to support themselves. If you do anything to try to move up, if you make any kind of money at all, then you're penalized for that and you're put right back into a worse position. So it's kind of like you're the fly that's caught in the spider web. And the spider never encourages the fly to improve and, you know, rise higher and find its true self. The spider has other uses for the fly. And that's the way you feel in the system here. Now, if your whole life has been like this, it's kind of easy how you slide into this sort of life. You've never had like an ordinary family life, you know, nuclear family with the mother and father always there, and you know, stable home life and regular meals, and you go to school and you have the opportunities. You've never had that. It's easy to see how they get into this position, but it's not a choice. Nobody chooses to end up like this. Everybody always has some ambition to do a little more. It's only when you've been kept down long enough and they finally break you down where you lose all your self-respect and your dignity, and then when you finally get to that point, then you're happy to live like this, because this is as good as it gets.
1, 2. You gotta hold on to the sides. Put your hands on the sides. Yeah. Yes, baby, because your arms are cold. Mommy gonna continue to push you. I just gotta put your arms in. Can Mama have some? Can I have some? No? You ate it away from me? Peekaboo. After my grandmother passed away when I was 12, I kind of got shuffled around the foster care system, and a lot of bad things were happening, so I decided to just not go back to the next one that they sent me to. So I think I was like 15 years old, and I decided that I wanted to, you know, try to figure out where I was going to end up, because I was just like staying at random different people's houses. Years fly by, because when you're homeless, you know, time just kind of slips away from you, and then when you're doing craziness, it makes it seem like you miss days and you miss weeks and then you miss months before you realize that it's a whole nother year and you're still stuck in the same situation. Through that time, I tried to do just about anything possible to make my situation different, but it just didn't seem like people were willing to help or even assist to let me know what any of that information was. You know, I never had a chance for anybody to explain any of that to me, because I kind of just been out by myself since I was a kid. So just because you don't know about what being homeless is or how it may make me feel doesn't mean that you should be uncomfortable by me. You know, come ask questions. That's how you get to know, or go look it up, because you can find just about anything on the internet now. So you can go look it up and get a clear description of what something is. There's a solution to anything. And for something like this, it's like, you know what you can do to make it better, but you still keep fighting everybody on that so that it doesn't make it better. Politicians, they all should come down and just like do a day in our shoes, a day in the life that we've had to live, or sit there with the people. It's like they have a hard time with inviting any of the homeless individuals, whether it's singles or parents, like inviting them to come and engage with them. Let them have a meeting with them so that they can hear it straight from the people themselves of what needs to be changed or what would happen if things were differently, instead of just saying this is what's going to change and that's it, and not consulting the people who it's going to affect.
We believe that the Tenderloin is the most important neighborhood to shape San Francisco's future because the Tenderloin is a microcosm of the entire city. All of the challenges that we see here are playing out across San Francisco, and if, as mayor, you can implement community-informed and innovative, evidence-based solutions to the core challenges we see in the Tenderloin, the rest of the city will follow with relative ease.
Before I came here tonight, I was actually asking people on the street, do you think that a new mayor coming in is going to actually make a difference on June 5th? And let's just be real, most people don't think that a new mayor is going to make a difference.
1,000 people want to get off the streets, and if we can do that, there'll be a lot less human waste on the streets.
With all due respects to the head of DPW, he needs to be replaced.
I don't think throwing more money into DPW and SFPD is the solution. We need unarmed eyes on the street.
The way that we address some of the challenges we know exist on our streets are safe injection sites.
We need to ensure that it's not going to be just simply a den for someone to shoot up.
I do support a safe injection site. I think the question is in what neighborhood?
Rather than have 50% of those in our county jail receiving mental health services, we do need a mental health justice center.
There's still challenges going through the courts to get somebody conserved. We can't wait until someone is a harm to themselves or others.
I want to bring in FEMA-style emergency type mobile homes.
We have got to do a better job with a long-term strategic plan around building more housing and building more housing for all income levels. When you've got billionaires coming into town with thousands and thousands of employees who are taking your apartments, we have to do something innovative.
Hundreds of millions of dollars is going from city to organizations, and money is not being accounted for. Where has it gone?
We're talking about economic injustice, environmental injustice, and social injustice. This can be addressed through the budget process.
Local hiring, and it was supposed to be 16% of the San Franciscans for the jobs. 20 years ago, it was supposed to be 16%. Today, it's 4%. Making sure that when we build more housing, the residents of this community who need stable housing have access to that. I'm committed to doing what I can to work with this community to make sure that you are not neglected in City Hall.
I'm a massage therapist. I came from Wyoming. I realized that I'd kind of capped out there, and then a fortune cookie changed my life. Are you ready for this? Yeah. It's kind of deep. It said if you don't change the direction that you're going, you're likely to end up where you're headed. It was definitely a direction. I couldn't really identify it comfortably though. And since I was uncomfortable in the position I was in, I chose to leave. And that was pretty expensive, and I didn't prepare for switching my massage license from Wyoming to California. And that was pointless. You know, if I'd have done a little bit more research, I'd have noticed. I learned fast. You know, it took me a few years to get back on my feet, but you know, now that I can afford my massage license again, I see my life falling back into place. And as soon as you want to, you will. That's one of the things that I learned. My car broke down in California. The city towed it, and when I went to pick up my stuff, my massage table was gone. Everything that I wanted to keep with me was gone. I had two choices. You know, I could just complain and feel sorry for myself, which I did for a while. You know, I definitely did that for a while because I wanted to. And you know what? I kind of needed it, and I feel much better now. But I also had the opportunity to grow, and so I just decided to stay in San Francisco where my car broke down. And then I saw a statue that also changed my life. And this statue is a statue of Philip Burton over by Fort Mason. And it's got a note in its pocket, I noticed. And that really was comforting. It said, "The only way to deal with exploiters is to." And I had to think about it for a while. You know, the only way to deal with exploiters is to what? Is to what? And then I realized that the only way to deal with exploiters is to deal with exploiters. And unfortunately, that's something that I didn't get to see much of in Wyoming. I'd have grown. I'd have grown if I'd have noticed it there. But since, you know, it was kind of just a drop into a pool of water when I moved into California, I decided to judge first. And I realized that wasn't getting me anywhere. So I stopped judging, and I realized that, you know, everybody's got feelings and emotions. I can help that if I want to. And then I started wanting to, so now I'm beginning to do that, and I feel a lot better. It's one of the things that I realized that I needed to escape. I was falling into something that I wasn't comfortable with, and now I found it. I found it. These are my devil sticks. These are my escape from everything that was negative in my life. And I made the decision that I have control over what that is. I can choose the influences in my life, whether they're negative or positive. I'm the one that gets to decide. I'll repeat that as many times as I need to, because it's still the truth. Definitely not something that takes too much effort. And look at how many people smile.